Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem and welcome back to today's Daf Yomi Kesubos Daf Men Beis. We actually got up to the top of the Amid, that is Amid Men Beis Amid Aleph. But perhaps let's go back to the Mishnah again and review the Mishnah, which will lead us into the Gemara. Okay, so let's start from the Mishnah on Mem Aleph Amid Beis, around 10 lines from the bottom, which is the beginning of the parak. Nara and its patasa. So we have an Isha, a Nara, who was involved in Pitoy. She was coerced, seduced into an involvement with a man. Boishsa, upgama, uknasa shalavia. All payments that this perpetrator will forward, be it the boishes, shame and embarrassment, upgama, due to her loss of value, uknasa, that's the standard 50 shekel knas punishment. These three payments are directed to the father, shel avia. He has the right to collect on this. V'atzar, and the fourth payment, tsar, pain, discomfort, bitfusa, that applies to an isha who was forced, meaning an oinus. So on top of the previous three payments, boishes, begam, and knas, there is an additional payment of tsar, which happens by the oinus. All these payments go to the father. So they took the perpetrator to the Bezdin, and Bezdin obligated him to pay. And this occurred before the father passed away. Hari ein shel av. So the money is directed to the father. Mesa av. What happens if he passes away at this point? After the Gemar Din, after Bezdin compelled this fellow to pay. Hari ein shel achen. So now, even though father has not yet collected on this obligation, the money has not yet reached the father, but since Bezdin made a Gemar Din, they issued a verdict against this fellow and compelled him to pay, it's as though father had attained, so to speak, rights to that money, in which case, when he passes away, that money gets passed on to his sons, who are the brothers of this Na'ara. But that's because there was ha'amada b'din, there was a verdict issued prior to his death, which granted him those rights. But lo yaspik alamad b'din ashem esav. Suppose she didn't get a chance to obligate this fellow in Bezdin until the father passed away. Hari ein shel atzma. So now the payment is redirected. It no longer goes to the father. Rather, the address is her herself. And it doesn't get passed on to the father's sons because he never got it. It was never really his. Bezdin never activated this chiyuv yet. It was just theoretical. He never had it in his hands to pass it on to his children. So when he passes away, who gets it? The daughter gets it. The same idea would happen if she turns an adult in between, a begeres, in which case she sort of leaves her father's domain. What happens then? Where is the payment directed to? Well, it depends when she was a begeres. Before the Gemar Din or after the Gemar Din? Amda b'din at shaloi bagra. Bezdin obligated this fellow to pay before the girl turned a begeres. Hari ein shel av. So the money goes to the father. Mesa av, and subsequently father passes away, even before he got a chance to collect. But after the verdict was issued, he passes away. Hari ein shel achen. The payment is now directed to this fellow's sons, the sisters, the brothers of this Isha. So again, the same point. Because once the Gemar Din happened, father sort of got rights to this payment, in which case he could pass it on to his children in the event that he passed away. But lo yaspik alamad b'din at bagra, they didn't have a chance to obligate this fellow in Bezdin before she became a begeres. Now it's too late. Now she acquires rights to this payment. Hari ein shel atzma. The payment is directed to the Isha herself. The bottom line is, according to Tanakama, what determines ha'amada b'din? Rabbi Shimon Omer, no. Im lo yispika ligbois at shemei sa'av. Ha'amada b'din. Bezdin imposing this payment is not enough to make it the father's money. He needs to actually collect on this claim. And therefore, im lo yispika ligbois at shemei sa'av. If she didn't get a chance to collect, meaning this fellow didn't actually pay his fine and his financial obligations until father passed away, so father never actually received payment, the payments are redirected and they go to the daughter herself. Because according to Rabbi Shimon, even though there was ha'amada b'din, there was a verdict issued, and Bezdin imposed these payments, and they obligated this fellow to pay, it's not yet the father's until he actually gets it, until he takes possession of that money. And then, if he would pass away, he passes it on to his children. But if there was no gviyah, there was no collection yet, it's all theoretics, and therefore he has no schus to pass that on to his children. Rather, it goes to the Isha herself. Continues the Mishnah. In the following case, all agree that it's considered the father's money, even though he didn't collect as of yet. Masiyadeh, the earnings of this girl. Umitziyasa, her findings. She finds a lost item. Even though she didn't yet get her paycheck for the work that she performed, it still goes to the father, and if father is no longer here, it goes to the children. Meisa Av, Harein Shalach, and it goes to her brothers, because in contrast to the payments which the Oines and the Mafata will do, which are not considered actual, payments for actual services received, it's more like a punishment, and it's knas related. So therefore, in that case, until there's some legal implementation, it's just theoretical. Either ha'amada b'din according to Tanakama, or actual collection according to Rabbi Shimon. But in terms of earnings, masiyadeh, that's a schus that any father has to take his daughter's earnings, and therefore, even before actually having collected that money, it's due to him. It's meant for him. And therefore, even if he passed away before he collected that money is part of his estate, so to speak, and gets passed on to his children. Asks the Gemara, Michael Mashlamon, what's the point of this entire Mishnah? That the fellow pays the boishes and pagam, and we know all that. Michael Mashlamon Tanina. We already learned this on Daf Lametes and a Mishnah. Hamafata noisin shleisha dvarim. Hamafata pays 3 things: boishes, pagam, and knas. V'oines arba. The oines adds the 4th, which is the tsar. Right? Hamafata noisin boishes, pagam, v'knas. Those 3. Moisav olav oines. Oines adds a 4th payment. Shenoisin satsar. He adds payment due to the pain and discomfort. So, what's the chiddush of our Mishnah? The answer is Lo'avia Istrichle. The chiddush is that it goes to her father. That's what the Mishnah is pointing out. Well, that also. Lo'avia Nama Pshita. Isn't that obvious that it goes to her father? How do I know that? But the Kayoyev Mefata. The very fact that a Mefata, who convinced the Isha to interact with him, the fact that he has to pay anything, isn't that the biggest proof that his payment is addressed to her father? Why? Otherwise, he wouldn't pay anything. Dila atzma. Because, let's say, for argument's sake, a mefate would direct his payment to the Isha herself, to the victim herself. Amayahiv mefate. So why would the mefate pay anything? Midata avad. He did it with her consent. Unlike the Oines, where it was a forced experience, this was with her consent. Why would he have to pay anything? So that's the biggest proof that his payment obligations are directed to the father. And that explains why, even by mafata, the Torah obligates payment to the father, even in this case where she consented. So the fact that a mefata pays at all is a right that goes to the father, because the father still maintains his claim against this fellow. So the kasha is, what's the point of our Mishnah? What's the chiddush of our Mishnah? That there are payments, we know that. That it goes to the father, we also know that. The fact that a mefata pays is a right that goes to the father. Answers the Gemara, Amda bedin estrichalei plukta the Rabbi Shimon Rabbanon. The point of our Mishnah is to highlight the transition point. When does it transition from just a theoretical claim to an actually implemented chiyuv mammon? So according to Tanakama, it's the amida bedin. When Bezdin obligates payment, that's when it becomes mammon. It becomes a schus, a monetary schus. And according to Rabbi Shimon, that doesn't happen until actual collection. So that's the point of our Mishnah, to bring out the machlekes between Rabbi Shimon and Rabbanon as to the switchover point, whether it's hamada bedin or the actual collection. Tanan Hasan. We have a Mishnah in Meseches Shavuos. Reuben gets up and declares, Anasta upitisa espiti. You, Mr. Shimon, you were involved with my daughter, be it through Einis or through Pitui. Pay up. Shimon totally denies. Untrue. Okay. Mashbiachani. Reuven responds, I impose a shvua on you to support your claim that you are exempt, that you are pater, that you are innocent. V'amar, amen. Shimon responds, yes, 100%. Confirmed, amen. I am accepting that shvua upon myself. And then he had second thoughts. Then he admitted, sure, yeah, it happened, and I owe you the boishes and the pagam and the knas and all that. The halacha is chayav. He's obligated. Obligated in what? So Rashi, around 10 lines from the top, explains. Chayav is a multiple chiyuv. Keren, he has to pay the actual principal of what he owes. V'chaimish, he must add a fifth as well. V'asham, and a carbon. Im hoida achri kain, when he admits after having denied and having consented to a shvua. V'zo asham gezelos. This is a special asham called asham gezelos. When a person denies a monetary claim and then comes back and admits after having made a shvua to support his denial, there is keren, there is a fifth, and there's a carbon asham. So in this case as well, you were einas or mafata? No, I wasn't. I didn't swear you. Fine. Then he comes back and admits. He must pay keren chaimish v'asham. Rabbi Shimon Poiter, says the Gemara. According to Rabbi Shimon, he doesn't have to pay. Why? She'enoi mishalim knas al pi atzmai. Because the fact is, the claim over here centers around knas. It's a knas payment that he is demanding from him. And the fact is, a person cannot offer to pay knas. We had this a couple of days ago, right? A knas must be imposed by a bezdin. The pasuk says, "Asher yarashiun Elohim." We need bezdin smuchin to impose knas. You can't just admit and offer and volunteer knas payments. It's different than mamain, which means an actual payment for actual services received or an actual damage that you did, etc. That's mamain, basic principal payment. Knas is a chiddush. It's something more like a punishment, which must be imposed and activated and triggered and initiated by bezdin. Therefore, says Reb Shimon, there's no room for asham, there's no room for this penalty here, which only applies when I deny a claim which I could have admitted to. So instead of admitting I denied, I made a shvur, I come back and I admit. So we start the whole process of the keren and the chaimish and the asham. Not so by knas, where I could not have admitted to it. My admission regarding knas is worthless. So in fact my denial was worthless. And therefore there's no a process applied in this case. A person cannot, even if he wishes to, he can't pay a knas, he can't obligate himself to pay a knas based on his own personal admission. Amr Loi, the Chachamim responded, you're right. Afal b'she'enim mishalem knas al pi atzmai, true. The knas aspect of this claim could not have been offered on his own. Aval mishalem boishes b'gam al pi atzmai. But let's remember, there are many aspects to the monetary obligations of the oines and mafata. True, there's the knas, the basic 50 shkolim knas, which is a knas. But then we have mamain aspects as well, basic repayment aspects. Due to shame, embarrassment, pain, damage, boishes, pagam, all that. That's mamain. And since he denied that as well, he is due to the process of keren, chemesh, v'asham. Interesting machlekes, which actually the Gemara will come back to at the very end of today's daf. We'll get there, Be'ezus Hashem. Abai asked Rabbi the following question. Reuben approaches Shimon, announced to Petisas Piti, you were involved with my daughter through Einos and Mefata. And he doesn't stop there. He adds, V'madaticha bedin, and I actually took you to Bezdin, V'nes chayavta limamin, and Bezdin compelled you to pay me. We're speaking after the fact, after the verdict. No, this fellow totally denies. What are you talking about? It never happened, it's never gonna happen. You never took me to the Bezdin. You're dreaming. I was never obligated to pay you a penny. He swore, and then he admits to the fact. What would you say in this case? Would Reb Shimon activate a korban shvur? The whole process of the keren, the chemesh, and the asham, would that apply in this case? Why? Why would I say this is different than the previous case? Perhaps kivan de amad bedin memoina havoy. Since even according to his own story, right, he admitted that he was already past the Bezdin. It wasn't just theoretical; it was actually activated. The chiyuv was implemented by Bezdin. Memoina havoy. Perhaps that affects a transition. The chiyuv perhaps has now transitioned and has become redefined, reclassified, so to speak. Once the Bezdin issues that verdict, you pay him X amount, we treat it as moment, a basic obligation. Perhaps it doesn't anymore, it no longer is considered knas. It's an actual chiyuv moment. In which case, a korban shvur can be applied to this type of denial and admission. Or perhaps you can say, even after Gemar Din, Knas Havi, it maintains its classification. After all, it's a Knas payment, in which case a korban shvur would not apply. Armalei Rabbi responded, you're right on. Mamoin Havi, it turns into Mamoin. Umachayev korban shvur, in which case a korban shvur can be applied to this. Esvi. So Abaye followed with a question. After Gemar Din, it turns into Mammon? Even according to Rabbi Shimon? Listen to this brayso. Rabbi Shimon Omer, Yochel, perhaps I would say, Ha'omer l'chaver, Reuben approaches Shimon with the following claim. Anasto pitisa is biti. And he denies. V'omer lo anasti, v'lo pitisi. Or another example. Heimis shoicha es avdi. Your animal struck down my eved. You owe me the payment, the knas payment, the standard 30 shkolim, which we learned about yesterday. And Shimon totally denies. He says, Lo yemis. It's untrue. Third example, Oisha Amalei, or Reuven tells, Oisha Amalei Avdai, or Reuven's slave turns to Reuven, his master, with the following claim. Hipalta es shini. Visi misa es eini. You knocked out my tooth. You knocked out my eye. The halacha is, if a master knocks out his son, his evet's tooth, or he is mesame, he blinds his eye, he goes out free. But the fact is, these are not examples of mammon. These are knas claims. Master denies, he says, I didn't knock out your tooth. I didn't blind your eye. And in all these cases, where he was confronted with regard to a knas claim, and he denied, swore to support his claim, and then he turns back and he admits, V'hoida, Yochli Chai, perhaps in all these cases there would be a Korban Shvuah Talmud Leim. The pasuk says no. Korban Shvuah applies only in the following cases. We have a whole long list of examples which are mammon related as opposed to knas. He denied his friend's claim, be it regarding a deposit which his friend claims to have made with him, regarding a loan, regarding a robbery, he withheld his friend's wages, or he had found a lost item that belonged to his friend, he denied owing his friend anything, and he swore falsely, so on and so forth. The process is activated when he comes back and admits he has to pay the principal, the fifth, and the korban. The fact that the pasuk gives you a long list of examples indicates that you must conform to these guidelines. Your chi of korban only applies when it's similar to these examples. Ma'elu miyuchadin, just as these are specific, shein mammon, they are mammon examples, actual monetary claims, right? A loan, a deposit. You owe me the money. Av kol shein mammon. Likewise, any other example of mammon would activate this process of korban shivua. Yatsu elo, as opposed to those mentioned earlier, etc., etc., shein knas. These are knas examples, in which case there's no korban shivua. As we explained before, the basic reason would be because you can't even admit when it comes to knas. The whole point is I denied something which I should have admitted. Well, by knas, my admission does not obligate me. So it's different than mammon. That's the Bryce. Who's speaking? Rabbi Shimon. My love, apparently, Bisha Ahmad Bedin was speaking even after he was taken to Bezdin. So Reuben is claiming that you Shimon, you Einas, my daughter, and we took you to Bezdin, and Bezdin obligated you to pay. So it sort of went through that transition. It went from knas and it was now reclassified as mammon. And still, what does the Brisa say? That according to Rabbi Shimon, we treat it like knas. And there's no korban shvuah upon denying this claim. And that's a kasha on Rabbah, who told us that after Amad Bedin, it sort of changes status. It turns into mammon. No, Bishloi Amad Bedin was speaking before the Bezdin got involved, in which case it's still a knas, and therefore there's no korban shivur. How could you say that? But since the first part of this brisa is speaking, must be speaking, after Bezdin got involved, let's assume that Sefer Nami b'Shamad Bedin, that the second part of the brisa, which we just learned, is also speaking after Bezdin's involvement. What's the reisha? Diktani reisha. Let's go back to the beginning of the brisa, which are actually the words of the Rabbanon, Shitas Rabbanon. Einli ela dvarim shemishalmin aleim es hakeren. Perhaps this whole process of repaying the principal plus a fifth plus the korban only applies to obligations, financial obligations, which pertain to the actual principal, such as a debt, such as a pikadon. What about tashlumei kefil? Tashlumei arba v'chamisha. The double payment, the 4 or 5 time payment that a ganav has to do. Right? Kefil is a typical geneva, or if it's an animal which he shechted or sold, it's 4 or 5 times as much. So the extra payments are not actual repayment, they're not principal, they're not mamain, they are knas. Another example, va'oines v'mafata, v'motzis shemra, all those fines imposed on these perpetrators. What happens if they deny the claim and then they come back and admit? Minayin, how do we know that this process is applied? Even in those cases, Talmud Leimer, the pasuk says, yes, umal amal bash riba. Umal amal Hashem is the actual word of the pasuk, riba. So it's a riboy to include all these variations, all these types of claims. So even when it's a knas, which he is denying. Then he comes around and he admits. We treat it like an ordinary claim, which was denied, sworn about, and admitted on, and we apply the process of Karban Shavua. Hey Chidami, what exactly are we speaking about? What are the circumstances surrounding these cases of Kefil and Oines and Mafata? What happened? Either Le'amad B'din, if it's before Bezdin got involved. Kfeilu Mi'ika. Since when does a Ganav pay double when there's no Bezdin involved? You can't just obligate yourself in Kefil. Apparently Bezdin had to get involved. Ela Pshita, apparently B'shamad B'din was speaking after Bezdin issued their verdict. And since this entire part of the Brisa, the first part of the Brisa, which we just learned, is speaking after Bezdin's involvement, Seifa Nami, the next part, which we learned in Amud Aleph, Reb Shimon's discussion, his list of cases, is also speaking Seifa Nami B'Shamad B'din, after Bezdin's involvement. That's a Kasha on Rabbah, who told us that after Amad B'din, all these types of Knas claims transition into Mammon claims. Once the Bezdin compels them to pay. Because the Rishimon says otherwise. Rishimon says that there is no Karban Shvua, even in these cases, even after Gemar Din, it's a Kasha on Rabbah. Amar later, Rabbah responds, you know what, Yechilna l'shnuyilach, I could have responded to you as follows. Reisha b'sh amad b'din, perhaps the first part of the Brisa, the one speaking about, Kefil, is speaking after Bezdin's involvement. V'seifa b'sh amad b'din, and the next part, Reb Shimon's discussion, without Bezdin's involvement. V'kula Reb Shimon he, and in fact the entire Brisa reflects Shitas Reb Shimon, and it all depends if it's before Bezdin or after Bezdin. Before Bezdin, it's still considered a Knas. After Bezdin gets involved, it transitions and it's reclassified as Mammon. But you know what? It's a weak answer. I prefer not to offer weak solutions. Why? What's so weak about it? What's wrong? Because if I would have told you that, honestly, you would have responded as follows. If the entire Brisa is a narration of Reb Shimon, then listen Reisha Reb Shimon Omer, then the Brisa should start with the words Rabbi Shimon Omer as follows. Oy listen Seifa, Divi Rabbi Shimon, or at the very end of the Brisa, we should have the words Divi Rabbi Shimon. The above mentioned opinion is Reb Shimon. We don't have it that way. Rather, Reb Shimon's name lands right in the middle, smack in the middle of the Brisa. We have the Reisha unnamed, and then we go to the Seifa, we have Reb Shimon Omer, etc. Which sounds almost like there's another Manda Amar who initiated the Brisa, and then Reb Shimon comes in and adds his opinion. So that's not a probable approach, that the entire Brisa is Reb Shimon. Ella, rather, let's take a different approach. Kula b'shamad b'din. In fact, the entire Brisa reflects a situation which occurs after Bezdin's involvement, after Bezdin issues a verdict and applies a Chiyiv Mammon on the Ganav, on the Oines, all these cases after Gemar Din. V'reisha Rabbanon. And the answer to the Brisa is as follows. The Brisa starts with Shitas Rabbanon, who say that we learn from the Pasuk Mala Mal Bashem, which is a Riboy, to include all these transitions, all these Knas situations which had sort of morphed into Mammon. We treat them as Mammon, and the Karban Shvua is fully applicable. V'sefer Reb Shimon, the next part of the Brisa, which was quoted on Amud Aleph at the bottom, where Reb Shimon gives us a long list of Knas claims and denials and Shvuas, where there is no Karban Shvua. That's Reb Shimon's Shita, who holds that even after Gemar Din, the Knas remains Knas. It's not reclassified to Mammon. A punishment remains a punishment, a fine remains a fine, whether it's prior to Bezdin's involvement or post Bezdin involvement. And therefore, Karban Shvua is inapplicable. Question is, the Rabbi himself told us otherwise. And he told us that after Gemar Din, even Reb Shimon agrees it turns into Mammon. No, and I agree to you. So here Rabbi is sort of retracting a bit. He says, now I see that I have to sort of tweak my response. I'm going to agree to you. Le'inyan karban shvua, that pertaining to this concept of karban shvua, the rachmana patre, that even if the Gemar Din, there is no chiv of karban shvua. You know why? Because of that pasuk that we mentioned before, which gives us a list, an itemized list of potential karban shvua situations. A debt, a deposit, withholding earnings, etc. Which are all, what do they all have in common? They're all straightforward monetary claims, actual claims. Karban shvua applies only there. But otherwise, if it's a knas claim, which sort of transitioned into mammon, because Bezdin got involved and turned into a regular monetary claim, that's not enough to obligate the karban shvua. That's Rav Shimon's opinion. And it's based on the pasuk of V'kichesh. Why then would the pasuk have to give you an itemized list of potential karban shvua cases? That's a raya that you need pure mammon, something which started as mammon from the get-go, rather than something that started as knas and sort of transitioned into mammon. V'chika amina, mammon havi. So Rabbi continues, when I told you that a knas after Gemar Din is considered the mammon, even according to Rabbi Shimon, so Tosfos explains that Rabbi heard from his Rebbe that it's called mammon, but he wasn't sure it pertained to what context, right? After Gemar Din, the knas is considered the mammon. Originally he thought regarding karban shvua, that was disproven. So now he says it's considered mammon regarding one detail, lo yirisha libanov. After Gemar Din, it's considered as though the victim, the recipient of this payment, has already laid his hand on that payment, in which case if he passes away, it gets passed on to his children amongst his other belongings. So that happens after Gemar Din. Whereas before Gemar Din, if the victim passes away, there's nothing to pass on to his children because the money has not yet arrived to him. He hadn't received payment. And since it's only knas, it's all in the air, it's all theoretics. There's nothing in his possession that he can pass on to his children upon his death. But after Gemar Din, it's as though it already reached his domain, reached his hold, his possession, in which case when he passes away, it gets passed on to his children. So nothing to do with karban shvua, which pertains only to situations which are strictly and purely mammon. But when I say after Gemar Din, it changes to mammon, I'm speaking regarding Yerusha, Esvei. So Abaye asked him further, you're telling me that Gemar Din is that sort of transit point, which turns the knas into mammon? Regarding Yerusha, Reb Shimon Omer, let's go back to our Mishnah. Reb Shimon says, the trigger point is not Gemar Din. The trigger point is actually receiving those funds. By the time she collected the funds, the father passed away. Who does the money go to? Father. It goes to the daughter. Harayin shel atzma, she gets it. And this is even after Gemar Din. According to you, that knas gets reclassified as mammon once the Gemar Din occurred. So now it's considered the father's money, which gets passed on to his children upon his death. La'atzma amhai. Why does Reb Shimon say she collects the payment? Da'achan boy mihavi belongs to her brothers, her father's sons. That's a strong kasha on Rava. Amar Rava. It was such a strong kasha that it lasted for 22 years until they found a solution. Hi Milsa. This problem, Koshoiba, Rabba, Rav Yosef. Rabba and Rav Yosef together could not find a solution. For how long? For 22 years. Esrim v'tartan shnin. V'lo yifrik. They could not find a solution. Ad Yosef Rav Yosef Bereish, until Rav Yosef assumed the mantle of Rosh HaYeshiva. Upirka, and he found a solution. There's a beautiful Rashi here, around 18-20 lines from the top. It says, Esrim v'tartin shnin. What happened with 22 years? What happened? So he says, 22 years. Hein hayu yemeis rarasa shel Rabba. So first Rabba was the Rosh HaYeshiva, and then, after his passing, Rav Yosef took over. So for 22 years, when Rabba was the Rosh HaYeshiva, they could not find an answer to this question. Umeis, and then he passed away. V'yashiv Rav Yosef b'rosh. Rav Yosef was appointed the head of the yeshiva. Listen to this. V'sayu min hashamayim, and he got siyata d'shmaya lefarka, to come up with an answer. Why? Li'eslei l'shem, in order to establish for himself a name, to earn a reputation amongst the masses. Why did he need to establish himself? Wasn't he chashav enough, Rabbi Yosef? So he says, Lefishahaya Rabba Chorav. Rabba was known to be extra sharp. That was his expertise. That's why Rabba was referred to as the mountain uprooter. He was sharp as can be. On the other hand, Rav Yosef Hayabal Shmois. Rav Yosef was very knowledgeable. Mishnah, Brisa, he knew everything. But he wasn't known for his deep analytical abilities. L'kach kar'u Sinai. In fact, that's why Rav Yosef was called Sinai. He had broad knowledge, like Har Sinai. But now that he was appointed Rosh HaYeshiva, Hashem wanted people to appreciate his depth as well. So Hashem gave him the siyata d'shmaya to come up with an answer at that moment. There's a story. Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky was once preparing for the shir in the yeshiva, and he said, something strange happened to me today. You know how many times I learned this Gemara, this Sugya, over and over? It's been many years. I never understood, a certain specific point was never clear to me. Until today, when I was preparing the shir, now I got it. He says, maybe I got special heavenly assistance because of the parnasa that I earned from giving a shir. So because of parnasa, Hashem gave me a special siyata d'shmaya to achieve clarity for my shir. So sometimes it just pops in, unexplained. So what was the answer? Okay, heard so much about the answer. So what happened here? Ad Yosef, says the Gemara, so it was shver for 22 years. Ad Yosef Rav Yosef Bereish, until Rav Yosef assumed the position of Rosh HaYeshiva, Pirka, and he answered the question. Okay, we almost forgot about what was the question? Again, the question was that after Gemar Din, even a knas turns into a moment, right? So why does Rav Shimon say that when it comes to oines and mafata payments, it's not considered the father's money. It's not considered basic repayment. It's not considered mammon. Even after Gemar Din. Answer is Shani Hasam. There it's different. The pasuk says, "V'nosan ha'ish ha'shoichev imo al avi anara chamishim kesef." The pasuk uses the word v'nosan. This perpetrator will pay, will give, will hand over 50 kesef to the father of the nara. We learn from here, Lo yizich soter la'av elo mishas nesino. When does father assume full rights to these funds? When he actually gets them. Until then, it's not really his. And this is what Rabbi told us, that after Gemar Din, it's already considered mammon and considered his possession, in which case he can pass it on to his children. Even if he passes away at that moment, that's not for oines and mafata. No. Oines and mafata is only his when he actually gets it. Rather, it applies other places. Elsewhere, B'shar Knas, other Knas payments have this idea that after Gemar Din, it turns into mammon. So, Oines Mafat is an exception. What about the 30 shkolim paid upon the loss of a slave who was killed by an ox? He hands over the 30 shkolim to his master. The very fact that the pasuk uses the word yitain instead of just yishalem, he must pay, he must hand it over. Here as well, we're going to say that the master only achieves full rights to that payment upon actually receiving those funds, and not beforehand. No, yitain l'chud v'nasan l'chud. The word yitain mentioned in this pasuk is not as sharp as the word v'nasan mentioned by the Oines Mafata. Rashi explains, yitain is instructions he should give. It's a generic term which doesn't mean more than that. But v'nasan, says Rashi, is davar hanasun kvar, something which was already handed over. Nasan describes the actual handing over of the money, that personal interaction. And by Oines Mafata, it's not his until it's his, until he gets it. So bottom line is, we sort of have two separate machlokes between Reb Shimon and the Rabbanan. Sounds a bit confusing, but just to simplify it, there are two separate issues here. One is a general question. Typically, when a person denies a monetary claim and then comes back and admits, after having sworn falsely, there is keren to be paid, chaimesh to be paid, asham to be brought. What type of denials would this apply to? According to the Rabbanan, whether it's mammon, whether it's a knas claim which had sort of transitioned into mammon due to Bezdin's involvement and Bezdin's issuing that verdict, that's also included, based on a pasuk of Marla Bal Hashem, which is a merabah, even those cases. Rav Shimon disagrees. It's a whole long list in the pasuk describing purely mammon related claims, things which started as mammon, ended as mammon, a debt, a pikadon, wages, but not anything which relates to knas. Even if Bezdin was involved and issued a verdict, pay up this and this much, it doesn't change it. It doesn't turn it into knas regarding the korban shvuah, which pertain only to items, to claims, which started and ended as mammon. So that's one shayla. Then we have another machlekes, specific to Oines Mafata. So typically, when it comes to a different type of knas, once Bezdin gets involved, even Reb Shimon agrees that it's considered mammon, but not pertaining to shvuah. Let's not confuse things. Pertaining to Yerusha. So the recipient is deemed to have sort of gotten a hold of that money, in which case when he passes away, even before actually collecting it, it can be passed on to his children together with his other belongings. That's a general formula, but does not apply to Oines Mafata. According to Reb Shimon, the pasuk which says v'nasan ish indicates it's only his when he sees the money. Now comes a kash. If that's true, if that's the case, that the funds paid by the Oines Mafata are never considered mammon until he actually receives payment. So why then does Reb Shimon have to look for the pasuk v'kichesh ba'mitay to prove his point? Again, what was his point? If Reuven approaches Shimon, you did Oines, you did pita with my daughter, pay up. He denies, he swears, and then he admits. There's no korban shvuah. Why? So I would say, why? Because it's knas. There's no korban shvuah by knas, as we explained so many times. And the Oines Mafata payments retain their knas definition until the very end, until they're actually paid out. So that's sufficient reason not to apply korban shvuah in these cases. It's knas. Does the Rosh Hashanah say that? No. Instead of saying a rather simple explanation, he offers another explanation. Back on Amud Aleph, 3 lines from the bottom, he says, there is no korban shvuah because the pasuk offers us a list of cases where korban shvuah applies. A debt, a deposit, etc. As opposed to this type of case of Oines Mafata. Why does he need that pasuk? Why can't he just state simply, Oines Mafata remains a knas. It's still a knas. Even after Bezdin got involved, it's still a knas. Because they weren't paid out yet. And by a knas, there's no korban shvuah. If it's still a knas, until he actually received payment, Why do you need that pasuk of a kichesh to prove your point? Tamalem of anasam nebayli, you should have brought the other pasuk of anasam. That the payments for Einas and Mafata are still considered knas until the last moment. Amar Rava, ki itzrich v'kichesh. You know why you need that pasuk of kichesh? Because there is one exception, there is one case that even the Einas and Mafata payments can be considered mumming. What is that case? Let's say they took the perpetrator to the Bezdin, who obligated him, and now the victim, the girl, becomes a Baigeris, becomes an adult. Now, according to Reb Shimon, since she turns adult prior to the actual payment being issued, she attains rights to that payment. She's Zeich, right? As we learned in the Mishnah. So now, these funds are considered hers. And now it's sort of turned into mammon. When it goes to the father, it only turns into mammon when he receives it. But now it's going to the daughter, so it's like any other knas payment. After Gemar Din, it's reclassified as a mammon, as a basic monetary obligation to the daughter. That's how Rashi explains it. And now what happens? Umesa, she passes away. And her father inherits her claims. The Hassam. So in that case, Kika Yaris, Avia. What is the father being Yerish? Mina Didaka Yaris. He's being Yerish her rights, her privileges, her financial claims against the perpetrator. Now this claim has turned into mammon, as we just explained. It's the daughter's claim against this fellow, and once it's after Gemar Din, it's reclassified as a basic claim, as principal, as mammon, as ordinary payment, not knas any longer. So now the father is yerish the daughter upon her passing. That claim transitions to him. He takes it over. So now he has a financial claim, a mammon claim, not a knas claim, a mammon claim against his perpetrator. So he approaches him, give me the money. Nothing doing. I swear. I admit. Is there a korban shvuah? There should be. Because he denied mammon. Why not? Why no korban shvuah? V'kichesh. That's why, for this specific case, we need the pasuk of v'kichesh, which indicates that only something which was always mammon, from day one, which was originally mammon, has the korban shvuah applied to it upon denial, swearing, and admission, as opposed to something which had transitioned from knas to mammon, which had started as a knas obligation, then was reclassified, redefined as mammon. There is no korban shvuah. That's Reb Shimon's opinion. Yachi. Okay, so this makes sense, but we have one more kasha. If that is true, what is true? That the Bryce is speaking after Bezdin got involved. And still Reb Shimon says korban shvuah is not applicable because it used to be a knas. What about the wording of the Bryce? Yotzu elo shein knas. Bryce says, well, all these examples are claims pertaining to knas. Mammon, it's not knas, it's mammon. After Bezdin got involved, it turned into mammon. Amar Nachman Bar Yitzchak, you're right. Yotzu elu. We're excluding these cases for, although they are currently classified as mammon, but let's go back a bit. They have some history attached to them. Sheikar and knas. They originated as knas. They started as knas. The oynes, the mafata, all these things are originally knasais. So even though they morphed and they evolved into mammon, it doesn't matter. That's Reb Shimon's opinion regarding korban shvuah. Continues the Gemara. Esvei. So Abai asked him another kash. Reb Shimon poiter she'eina mishalom knas al pi atzmi. Let's go back to that brisa. Actually, a mishnah. 9 lines from the top, back on Membez Amud Aleph. Reuben goes over to Shimon. Anasto pitisos biti. Shimon denies. Never happened. I impose a shvu on you, sure, I accept. Then he admits. Tanakama says, Keren Chaimesh and Asham. Reb Shimon says, no, he's pater. Why? In any case, he can't pay the knas. Al pi atzma, you can't offer a knas. In which case, he didn't really, his denial wasn't really an effective denial. He couldn't have admitted it. Denying means, I deny something which I could have admitted. My admission wouldn't have obligated me in any case, so the denial is really an ineffective denial. Reb Shimon Aimer, Reb Shimon Paiter, she'enim mishalem knas al pi atzmai. His knas was not really effective because he couldn't have paid on his own. That's the lashon of Reb Shimon. Let's make a deal. Tama delay amad bedin. Apparently, it's because it's before Bezdin got involved. In which case, if he would admit, he would be pater. So that makes sense. Ha'amad bedin. But if it would be after Gemar din, say Reuven claims, you were ma'anas, my daughter, and we already went to Bezdin. We were through it already. Went through the legal system, and Bezdin was machayiv you the money. So in this case, the mishal ma pi atzmai. Shimon could admit, because here he's just admitting to the fact that the Bezdin was machayiv in the moment. That's not called moed b'knas. After the Bezdin issues a verdict, it turns into mammon. Shimon has the full ability to admit to that. So ha'amad bedin, but if it would have been after Gemar din, the mishal ma pi atzmai, in which case Shimon can fully admit, korban shvuah nami mechayiv. In this case, if he would have denied Reuven's claim that Bezdin was already involved and issued a verdict, and he would have denied it and made a shvuah and admitted, he would have to give a korban shvuah. That's what it sounds like from Shimon's wording. It's only before the Bezdin got involved, but afterwards, we treat it like a regular monetary claim. And that's a kasha on you. You, Rabbi, just told me that according to Rabbi Shimon, there is never korban shvuah if it involves a claim which originated as knas. You have a pasuk v'kichesh to rule out these types of claims. The answer is, you're right. Rab Shimon l'devreim de Rabbanu kamaru. He was merely relating to the Rabbanu's opinion. L'didi, my personal opinion is that in all cases there's no korban shvuah because it's rooted in knas. Avagav da'amad, but then even if it's after the Bezdin wasn't involved, Rachmana Patre, Mivakichesh. The Torah issues an exemption because of the pasuk Vakichesh. It originated as Knas. There is no korban shvuah. Elo the Tchuba, according to your opinion, that is korban shvuah even in these cases. So although it started as Knas, but it turned into mammon, there's korban shvuah. Oidulu mias. But at least agree to me in this case. Heichadalei amad bedin. If the claim pertains to a monetary obligation before Bezdin's involvement, Reuben goes over to Shimon, you were ma'anas, my daughter. He makes no reference to Bezdin's involvement. In this case, it's certainly purely knas. How can you activate korban shvuah? Dichi katava, knasa katava. Because Reuben's, in effect, claiming knas against Shimon. Umayde b'knas pater. And if Shimon would turn around and agree and admit, he would be pater. So his denial, in effect, did nothing. He couldn't have admitted to this. So why would you impose a korban shvuah? Rabbanan savri, the Rabbanan hold. The answer is ki katava boishis of pagam katava. Let's remember, within the oines and mafata payment obligations, we find many components. True, there's a knas component. Granted, that would not activate a korban shvuah, but there are basic monetary obligations, basic repayment, boishes, for shame and embarrassment, pagam, loss of value. Kikatava, boishes and pagam kotava. That's what he had in mind when he grabbed him by the neck. You owe me the boishes and pagam. That's mamain. And when he denies and swears and admits, he's chayv korban shvuah. Apparently, Reb Shimon held that his primary focus is on the knas aspect of his obligation. Therefore, there's no korban shvuah. But Micah Miflagi, what's the point of this machlekes? Rabbanan say you focus on the boishes and pagam. Reb Shimon says his claim pertains to the knas aspect. Amra Papa. It appears that there's a bit of human psychology here. Explains the Ritzvah. A person does not want to overload his claimant. You owe me this, you owe me that. The other thing, the fellow's just going to turn around and walk out the door. He's going to deny everything. So he approaches him wisely, step by step. You owe me this thing here, right? And once he gets there, he'll take him to second base. So in the Oines Mafata Chiyuv, there are many components. There's the Knas component, the 50 shkolim, and then there's the Boishas Pukam. You have to pick, you have to choose which one to start with. He's only choosing one right now, one at a time. Which one would he start with? That's the machlekes. Amar Papa, Rab Shimon Savar, Lo Yishavik Inish, Midi de Kitz. A person would not let go of a chiyuv which is set and established. The 50 shkolim rate, that's set and established, clear cut. He wouldn't put that by the wayside, v'tava midid loy kitz, and apply his claim to boishas and pagam, which are undefined, which need to be appraised and verified. Why would he do that? A person would rather focus on the set and defined claim before he deals with the undefined claims, and therefore Shimon holds his primary focus is on the knas. Moedib knas is potter, and there's no karban shvuah. On the other hand, Rabbanan and Savri, they hold a person would rather first claim something which is mumming. In which case, if the fellow would admit it, he would have to pay, rather than focusing on knas, on which if the fellow would admit, he would be potter. Rabbanan Savri lo shavik inish midi. A person would not let go of something, something, a claim, on which if that person would be maida, he would not be potter. He would have to pay, such as mammon, boishas and bagam. He'd rather claim that. He wouldn't ignore that and choose the other thing instead of a tava midi and claim knas, the maida bei mifter, on which if the person would admit, he would be potter. Why would I do that? Let me first focus on the thing that I can grab from you. Hopefully you'll admit and you'll pay. So the focus is on the boishas and pagam, in which case if he denies and swears and admits, there's a karban shvuah, because these are moment aspects of my claim. So bottom line is, let's just recap the daf. We have three machlekes between Rabbanan and Rab Shimon. A general machlekes, when does karban shvuah apply? Upon denial, swearing, and admission. Rabbanan say, even something which started as a knas, but then evolved into mammon, by way of the verdict of Bezdin, that's included as well, based on the pasuk Umala Mal Bashem. Rab Shimon says no, only something which is ikare mammon, which started off as mammon, has the karban shvuah applied to it, and that's learned from Bekichesh Vamisai, which lists examples which are purely mammon. Another machlekes, at what point do the oines and mafata payments turn into mammon? According to Rabbanan, Hamada B'din, when Bezdin gets involved, it's redefined, reclassified as mammon. Reb Shimon says only mishas nesina. He learns from the pasuk v'nas navi anara. The actual payment turns it into mammon. A third machlekes, when there's a claim of oines and mafata, what's the focus on? Rabbanan say on the mammon aspects, the boishas ubegam. According to Reb Shimon, on the knas aspect, which is kait, which is set, and therefore, upon denial, swearing, and admission, there's no karban shvuah. Because there's no karban shvuah by knas. Because in any case, I couldn't have offered it on my own. So my denial was ineffective. All the best to you and much hatzlacha.